All right. Hi, everyone. I hope you're all having a very good week so far. And despite all that's happening in the world, first of all, sincere apologies for starting the webinar rather late. There was a mix-up with the logins for the host, but now we should be good. So it's really excited for this webinar that we are having Roy Olende from Zapier. Roy is the senior UX researcher at Zapier, and today he will be talking to us about effective product strategy. And so, without wasting any more time, I think I'm going to give the time for Roy to take it away. So, Roy, karibu sana, and please let us learn a little bit more about effective product strategy.
Hey, thanks a lot. Are you okay if I share my first on my video just so some people can see me? I always like to be seen a little bit here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So go ahead.
Great. Yeah, cheers. Really glad to be here. Thanks, Amos. Thanks, Lewis, for making this happen. I would have loved to be in Nairobi a couple of weeks ago doing this, but unfortunately, life, pandemics, I never foreseen. So yeah, just appreciate you all jumping in. Especially also, I had to reschedule the last one, so excited to dig into this a little bit. Yeah, before I get started here, it may be helpful for you to know a little bit about who I am and why I'm here giving this webinar. So as I said, my name is Roy Opata Olende, and yeah, I'm coming to you right now from just outside of Toronto in Canada. But I'm from Kenya, grew up in Kenya, still spend much of my time in Nairobi. Like I said, I was supposed to be in Nairobi for my brother's wedding actually a few weeks ago. And doing the talk as well. So unfortunately, things didn't quite work out. But as soon as this pandemic is over, I can come back home and spend time with family. Yeah, maybe what I'll do, I'll start to share my screen too. I've got a few slides as I sort of do this intro. Here we go. And maybe Lewis Amos can let me know if you can see that.
Yeah, looks good.
Okay. So yeah, as I said, based in Toronto right now, but I currently work with this team at Zapier. So Zapier is a SaaS company that's focused on automation, and my work there is based around research operations. So basically, I'm responsible for sort of building the structure and process to make it very simple for our team of researchers, PMs, designers, marketers, and others to learn from customers. And this is a recent retreat that we had. And yeah, outside of work, I have a great family. So this is them and my wife Deb. And we have 3 boys, one of whom I hope is going to end up in the NBA. We'll see. My wife has a tall family, and then. Aside from that, I'm an Arsenal fan, so if you dislike Arsenal, you can just hop off the chat. Anyway, I'd love to start off talking a little bit about what I did before Zapier. So before Zapier, I worked for a company called Buffer. I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with Buffer. Buffer is a social media focused company, and when I joined the team, this is the team a few years ago. We're in the process of growing quite rapidly. We were growing to about 80 employees from about 30 or so. So I came in at about employee 50. And with a growing team, we had some exciting things going on. So we had this expanded product offering, we had rising revenue, but as many companies at this stage, we started to encounter a few problems. And these problems is sort of typical for a company like Buffer. So we started off with a single product in 2011, but by the time I joined and a few years after, we were going into multiple product offerings, right? We had a original offering that was focused just on consumers. But now we're also serving businesses, and we're serving businesses in like every single industry imaginable, like publishers, agencies, like small business, enterprise. So it was a lot. And then with an ever-growing team, obviously that comes with an abundance of ideas about what to do next in every single part of the company and within each one of our products. However, what was actually the most concerning thing was this. So, skipped ahead here. How can we had a growing company, right? And we had dozens of employees, but we lacked a clear strategy, right? So how can a company with dozens of employees, millions of dollars in revenue, a good revenue growth rate, lack a clear strategy? Like, how is this possible? And it's actually quite straightforward, and I'll tell you a bit of a story to illustrate. So this is me back in the day in the middle here. I played rugby in high school and university. And when I was in university, I moved to Canada. I spent a lot of time in the gym with a friend of mine called Frank, right? And Frank was great to work out with because this guy was a machine. Like, he grew up in Canada. These guys who play American football, they're in the gym from like 13. So I loved working out with him because he was jacked, right? But whenever we hit leg day, right? Whenever we hit legs, for some reason, I could always push more than him, right? And I can't emphasize how jacked this guy was. But Frank was always a little cautious around the leg press machine. And it turns out that when Frank was in high school, he worked out with someone else who was even stronger than him. And this guy's name was Tony. And Tony, he would pile on lots of weight onto the leg press and really try to impress his buddies at high school. And it was really impressive for a young guy, right? And the more weight he added, the more impressive Tony looked. And at Buffalo, we're sort of doing the same thing as Tony. Like, we had expanded our market, we had built more features, we had added more customers, added more employees. It's adding on all these things, and it just looked really impressive from the outside. And one day, Tony, this guy went too far, right? He was trying to show off. He threw on too many plates. This is a true gruesome story. He threw on too many plates, and as he was pushing up the leg press, he overextended his leg. His leg buckled back. The weights came down. Luckily, there's a catch on the leg press, so the weights didn't crush him, but he broke his leg. He dislocated his knee. It was gruesome. And I think that's why Frank always sort of like was very cautious around the leg press. But this is similar to the path that we were on at Buffer. Everything was looking good. Like, we were growing, we were adding more features, but there was this underlying problem, right? We were about to reach this critical point of failure. And here's how I could tell that we had these underlying problems. Firstly, nobody on our team could clearly articulate the new problems facing our customers. I know this seems impossible. Buffer is like this quite successful small business, tens of millions in revenue a year. But nobody on our team could really articulate those problems with clarity. And then secondly, everyone on our team had different ideas about where we should focus on next. And for growing companies, this issue doesn't feel as acute as it does for maybe a struggling business, but the effects are similar, just with a bit of a different timeline. So let me illustrate this with the SCurve. And so this is, if you've never seen this, this is basically, it's a very common way of sort of illustrating what traditional growth looks like for SaaS businesses, right? So on the y-axis is growth, whether it's depending on what you care about growth-wise, whether it's revenue or users, whatever it is, and then on the x-axis is time. And so generally, a lot of businesses start off in slow growth phase. They're trying to sort of find product market fit, and hopefully they do that, and they hit this point of growth where growth starts to accelerate, and then they start to scale and do more. But it comes a point where your product has been in the market for so long and the market has changed so much, impending failure. Bit of a story. This owner, you'll understand as I'm telling this story, HubSpot, and his name's, it's a tool that creates software. Is from a blog post a few years ago that's quite popular. So he says, here's at HubSpot, target market. We wanted to build an offering for owner Ollie, a small business owner with less than 10 employees and no full-time marketer. We had another that wanted to build an offering for marketer Mary, another person, a marketing who worked in a company between 10 and 1,000 employees. So by not deciding on one of these owners, we put a gigantic invisible optionality tax. So it turns out that the product requirements, support requirements, pricing, and everything were different for Ollie and Mary, and that by not deciding, we made one uninspired compromise after another, and never one. 2012, Mary. The truth is, you could make a strong argument for either one of these, both sort of right, but the key thing was picking one, sailing the ship. The situation we faced it, in and amongst all this growth, and we were serving owner Ollie, marketer Mary, and like many other more customers, right? And because of this, we continually paid a huge optionality tax. This is why everyone in the company had different ideas about our product strategy and very little clarity about the top user needs to solve. And so similar to HubSpot, we needed to take 2 steps to stop paying this optionality tax. Now, the first one is actually picking a target customer. And the second is crafting a strategy around those target customer needs. So let me get into what that actually looks like very practically. So the first question they need to wrestle with is, which type of customer most values the types of solutions that we create, and why? So these questions, these 2 questions about what they value and why they value them, they're the critical questions that guided our process for actually going and picking a target customer to focus on. So I worked closely with the CEO as we did a few things. We firstly spoke to like a wide range of our customers to understand how they use social media. So that's what we're focused on. And these were remote calls just over the laptop, and didn't have to be complicated. Like what we did was just contact our customers and ask them how they're using the product, ask them to show us how they're actually doing their work, learn more about the use of social media, right? That was the first step. And the second step is we visited customers and non-customers in 2 cities in the States to discover more about how they work and understand which factors drive success within their business. Now, this one takes more time and planning than jumping on a remote call on Zoom or something, but it provides lots of this missing context about what's important to our customers, because what's important to our customers should be important to us. And then thirdly, I collected a bunch of secondary industry data to understand trends within different industries. We just wanted to gather as much context as possible, because in reality, when you're making as big a decision as should we tweak what we're focused on, like we have 80 employees, we have this juggernaut of a business that's doing well, but probably headed for a dodgy place. We needed as much context, as much information as possible, so that we could then discuss and debate and see what this information was telling us. So it really took a few months, but after all this process, we then came to a place of clarity about a few things. First was the business models of our current customers, right? In understanding what's important to our customers, we began to really grasp, okay, like, how do they make money? Like, what are the important levers within their business? Also, which industries are best positioned to leverage social media and the future growth prospects in those industries? We're not in this to just work with a target customer that we feel we want to work with. We need to make money. And so which industries, what areas of certain industries are best positioned to leverage social media and therefore best positioned to help us long term? And then also, the customers for which we could add the most value, right? So not only where are we seeing growth, but how are we uniquely skilled to add the most value? And this is a good moment to pause and ask yourself these questions, right? For your business, I'm not sure if those on the call are actually leading a business or just working maybe in a PM position in a business or something like that. Do you know the answers to these questions? Like, if you're in B2B, do you know how your customers make money and which levers enable them to bring in more revenue? If you're B2C, like, do you know what guides consumer buying habits for your product or your service? Like, not do you think you know, do you actually know? Have you heard repeatedly people telling you these things so that you have enough knowledge to sort of, look at that business model and see where you intersect with it? More importantly, does your team know the answers to these questions, right? And then most importantly, do you and your team have the same answers to these questions? Because what we were finding at Buffer was that the CEO had an idea about something and the COO would have a different idea. And as you just roll on across the executive team, across the leadership team and everyone else, we all had different approaches, different thoughts about this. But this process helped to unify our thoughts. So by the end of this process, right, like we knew who we wanted to focus on because we had nailed these questions. And so at Buffer, with these answers, it became quite straightforward to pick a target customer that our entire company could rally around. So in essence, we had our marketer Mary sorts. So next came strategy. And the key question here was, how can we gain an unfair advantage in serving our target customers? All right, so the first piece is the target customer. We need to know exactly who we're serving because that makes sure we're not paying a really high optionality tax. But now we can then focus on, how can we gain an unfair advantage in serving these target customers? What were their most significant unmet needs? Like, what new practices were they adopting? Where did they see opportunities for more revenue? And how could we best serve those efforts? So obviously our CEO and our executives were the final decision makers about our specific strategy, but the direction was made clear by the customer insights. And so our new company and product strategies needed to articulate why we were focused on a new target customer, and importantly, like the advantages of not paying that optionality tax, how we aimed to serve these target customers, like what specifically were we going to do that other companies either didn't have the capability of doing or the interest in doing. What would signify our success in serving these target customers? Like, as we're going down this path of serving them and have adopted a strategy, how will we know that we're succeeding here? Because it might make sense to turn around if we're not succeeding. And what would we no longer be doing, right? This is the critical piece. And this is, I think, a piece that a lot of teams have difficulties just nailing is, what are you going to stop doing? Because you sort of need to omit to commit, right? Like you need to omit something to properly commit to a new venture. So we needed to articulate, like, what are we stopping? And it needs to be painful, because the only way to actually have a good strategy is by making very painful decisions. Like there are things that you're going to be invested in, that you've spent months and years on, that you need to drop so that you can focus and follow a new path that is going to take you to a better place. Now, I obviously can't share the details of what we decided at Buffer, but I can tell you though, when our CEO and acting head of product unveiled our new company and product strategy, it was sort of like this giant weight had been lifted off the back of our entire team. It was beautiful. So marketing, they knew where to focus, and they knew sort of like the points to hit for awareness and different marketing efforts. Our customer support team, they knew how to prioritize the support queue, right? Before we had like, dozens of different types of customers coming in with different types of plans. And now we could go, okay, these customers are the most important to us. We want to not only serve them, but learn from them as they're in the process of getting support. And product, it's huge, right? Instead of sort of this wishy-washy approach to, this idea makes sense because it just so happens that I have more energy today to approach that idea, or this idea makes sense because I'm the CEO or I'm the head of product and I feel like it's the right idea. Product automatically sort of knew which direction to go and which problems to tackle, because we had lots of clarity about the path that we were focused on. And here I have to give major props to Buffer's CEO. He took out a lot of time to travel to different cities, to have debates with me, to jump on customer calls, have these deep discussions about our findings, so that we could really identify not only who our target customer is, but sort of which gaps were the best to tackle. And he's the CEO of a multi-million-dollar SaaS company. So if you feel like speaking to customers or dedicating resources to this sort of research is too much of a time suck, I sort of urge you to step back and think about how this stance could actually be adding unnecessary risk to all that you're doing. It feels good to execute. It feels good to ship. It feels good to be active. But actually, a lot of times, the most important thing is to take that step back very often and to consider whether the actions are headed along the right path or not. So, here's some questions for you to consider as you sort of look at these points about strategy. Does your team have clarity about your target customer? Does your team have clarity about the core problems that you're solving for that customer? Are you paying an optionality tax due to a lack of focus and a lack of understanding about your customer's core needs? For most companies, I've gone from Buffer, which is about 80 employees, to Zapier, we're just over 300 and growing quite quickly. And it's interesting to see the difference in size, not only with the team, but all that we're building. And it really shows me that actually the problem for most companies, probably until they get into the thousands of employees, is scaling down and focusing on a more narrow set of objectives, a narrower focus for target customers, a narrower strategy. Because what I've seen is it's very easy to have ideas about what could happen, but all that brings is confusion and this optionality tax that we're talked about. So what was the result of all this work? Again, I can't go into the details of the actual strategy, but I can show you sort of one result of this that's really clear, and it's from Buffer's website. Buffer's website before. This GIF will come through again, but it's quite plain and generic, right? It's just sort of like, how can better way to share on social media for marketers and agencies, and it was very much focused on like trying to save people time and being clever in that way. And that was okay, but it was, I was just like very shallow. And after we switched up our strategy, right, after we had this focus on a target customer and a very narrow focus on who we're going to be serving, this is what the new website looked like. And again, this GIF will scroll through again, but there's keywords in here like engagement and workflows and the importance of Instagram. There's very clear language and a lot of visuals here that really emphasize what Buffer is trying to do in this new chapter, right? And this isn't just throwing together someone who is really good with branding, someone who's very good with visual design. This is the result of really tight strategy. And obviously on the marketing team, good execution, but this all comes back to the customer. It all comes back to understanding that target customer and making a decision about that customer and understanding how you can be best positioned to serve that customer. So the team has been freed up to innovate by this narrow focus on what matters the most. And here lies the major lesson, right? If you don't take time to learn what's important to your target customers, even good execution will eventually fail you. The good thing about what happened at Buffer is we had started to see sort of like a small decline in our growth. And as you could see it, as soon as we switched focus and really threw off a bunch of work that we had been focused on for many years, we saw our customers, our target customers, really excited about the things that we were building. And we saw growth start to jump. I'm not in the company anymore, so I don't actually have access to the growth rates and that sort of thing now. But believe me, when you have this focus, when you know your target customer, when you know exactly how you're going to serve them and the things you're going to stop doing, it gives you a lot of ammunition to attack growth and to be more successful as a company. And that's it. Would love to hear if anyone has questions.
Awesome. Thanks, Roy. Sorry. Is there anyone on the webinar who would like to shoot Roy some questions? Please feel free to go for it. Sammy has a question.
Mm-hmm.
KG as well. So Sammy, go ahead.
So I was asking, what about data products? Sometimes they don't really have a clear customer in the traditional sense of software products. So when you're delivering for data products in an institution, then who then would be your customer ultimately?
So you're talking about like an internal data product, so like something you'd be building for like maybe a decision science team or something like that? Is that?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm in this situation right now where a lot of my work has switched from researching and investigating what's happening with customers to now my focus is about building structures and systems that allow our team to go out and learn from customers. So I'd say actually you now have internal customers, right? And similar to my approach to thinking about who's your target customer and what are the things that you can do to best serve them, I think those apply equally to internal customers. So as an example, one of the first things that I did when I came into Zapier was spend many weeks learning, researching research. Like what what do our UX researchers feel about what's happening right now? Where are we strong? Where are we weak? What do our design managers think about what's going on with the research? Like, what opportunities that they are trying to pursue right now that research could sort of come in and assist. On the PM side, like, what are PM's priorities right now? And so whether you're serving external customers or internal customers, sometimes it may be mandated to you that you internally have to serve a specific group. But I think that just means you've been given your target customer. So it's actually easy. You don't have to work around figuring out who this is. You already have this target customer. And so go ahead and like try and learn what's going on. Like, what are, I think about this for, say, designers or PMs, like, what kind of things help a designer get promoted, right? Because if I can help that designer, and I can identify what they're trying to accomplish, this is sort of like what's going to help our customers make more money. In my mind, that's like internally, what's going to help a PM have an impact, like deliver a great project? What's going to help a designer deliver a great project? I want to investigate those things, because if I can find that out, I know what the incentives are. I know how to sort of best serve them. And I want to frame what I'm delivering in a way that is going to be received. So whether it's external customers or internal customers, I think it all applies.
Cool. Sammy, I hope that's clear for you.
Yeah, happy to follow up if that wasn't clear.
Okay, I think I'm just gonna think she's okay. Keji, you have a question? Keji? Okay. We're just gonna go back to Sammy. She has a follow-up question.
Yeah,
I think. Yeah.
So thanks. Yeah, that clarifies some parts, but I have a follow-up question in the sense that when you're delivering projects, really they're customer-centric, and you go do customer interviews and you come back and build solutions based on what the customers have said. Mm-hmm. But sometimes in a data project, you find that what the customer wants cannot be supported by the data internally. So then how do you achieve that balance of still giving a product that may not be what the customer wanted, that actually still gives value to the institution?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, I think part of this is just I think there's a bit of I don't really kind of even want to really call it politics, more like there's sort of a sales angle. I think of what I get in terms of the sales pitches from different companies and what they're trying to sell me on based on whether I need it or not. And sometimes it'll stick, because even though it doesn't provide every single thing that I need, there's sort of like, I don't necessarily want to say an MVP sort of angle to this, but trying to line up like, I'm trying to be very clear about which part of the needs are served and which are not. And sort of seeing that as an opportunity to, I think this depends heavily on the company that you work in and the dynamics with leadership. A lot of times the holes are great because it shows what capacity we're lacking. I think the hardest place to be is where you are expected to deliver certain things, and either you can't do it, or it's not going to be, you can see it's not going to be as valuable as you want. So depending on sort of the dynamics within your company, I would say there's a couple options. One is like slow progress, right? This is not sort of where I want to be, but what's like a little nudge that I could give to keep people, so that we can at least make a little bit of progress on, I delivered this, and maybe it wasn't exactly what you had expected. These are the reasons why. If I had X, I would be able to deliver better. Or if we change this, then I wouldn't need to deliver it. And so I don't think it's, I've simplified here with telling you this story. this story was like years in the making. There are people who worked at Buffer just when I joined and left soon after, that I had these conversations with them, right? So it took years to get to the point of, oh, great, like our CEO and executives really see the value of focusing, right? I had these conversations with our head of design for like a year and a half, and then he left. And only after that did we begin to tackle this. So sometimes it's a bit of a slow roll. Like it may not happen immediately, but think about what little nudges can you put in place to go in that direction if you don't have the ability to set the agenda. Hope that's helpful.
Cool. Keji is back. Keji, do you want to shoot your question to Roy?
My question is, you are in Zapier now, so I kind of understand that in B2B, it's quite a different dynamics to studying and then trying to preempt what your user would like really at different segments, and then trying to serve them. I mean, at the same time, where it's mostly heterogeneous in nature. So how have you been able to do that across board? So because at Zapier, since it's a B2B, you kind of want to serve from NGO to government to some private donors and all that. How do you, immediately get into breaking this segment down and then feeding into what you have, as a solution?
Yeah. I'm new at Zapier. Here there's a bit of a different approach, partly because of the scale that we're at, and partly because of the product we're building. Like we're creating a product that is brand new to most people, right? Like to automate workflows is something that people are quite unfamiliar with. And so we actually have had over the years like a very very enthusiastic group of like early adopters, essentially, who have really been helpful in helping us to learn, helping us to improve. But I'd say it's a little bit different from what we had at Buffer, and we're sort of like working out the kinks here. So yeah, I'd say Buffer was a smaller scale, and it took us a bunch of years to get to the place of real focus. We have a bit of a bigger team at Zapier and have a few different focuses because we have that team. So yeah, it's a bit different here at Zapier.
Cool. Roy, there's a question from Lois, and he is asking, 1 second, let me see if we can find it actually. What's the formula for a great strategy? And are there any elements to look out for?
Yeah. There are many formulas. Like if you look for strategy books, you won't go into Amazon and search strategy, and there's just thousands upon thousands upon thousands. What we try to do is to be as simple as possible, right? And this is where I sort of come back to strategy is not devoid of that customer, right? We really need to define who that customer is. In fact, maybe I can jump into, I think I maybe had this on the slide. Yeah, actually I did. Let me share my screen again quick here. Yeah, so these are sort of the points that we tried to hit, also the questions that we tried to answer. So being really clear about like why we are focused on a new target customer, like why are we not just serving 5 or 10 of these customers, being really clear about why this focus is important, how we actually aimed to achieve it, right? So a very clear articulation of we are going to do 1, 2, 3 in order to serve these target customer needs. And these needs are important for these reasons. What would signify a success, right? So we need to be able to, in about, whether it's depending on who you are and where you work, whether it's a month or a quarter or half a year, to be able to look back and go, okay, we started off with this hypothesis that like, okay, if we're doing well, these are going to be the markers for us. So we need to be able to signify success at this point from what we know now. It may change a little bit, but at this point, you need to have a clear indication. And then I think what is actually the most important is what we are not going to be doing. We need to have omissions, right? This is like the painful part of strategy, right? It's clearly saying, what are the great things that everyone feels are awesome, and we're just gonna call them out, right? So those are sort of the questions that we ask. I mean, there's so many approaches to this, but those are the things that we wanted to nail. We wanted to answer these questions from the leadership level, and then have everyone in the company. I think this is also where it's important. We wanted everyone in the company to have the same answer to these questions, right? It's well and good for the CEO to know that doesn't really activate innovation, right? Like doesn't really activate ideas, because that, those ideas are housed in one person's brain or the brain of the executives. If everyone in our team can answer these questions, we know that we're in a good spot.
Cool. I'm just going to move over to Millie's question on what are the biggest things to look out for when creating B2B and B2B strategies if you serve both markets?
B2B and B2C?
Yeah.
Okay, this is what I've got to say. I've got to be honest. I've never served B2C. So these are some of the limitations of my knowledge. At Zapier, we're sort of a bit in a two-sided market because we have customers and we have partners. So, from Facebook to Google to Salesforce to all these companies that we integrate with, so that customers can actually get benefit from connecting these apps. So I think this is actually an area that I have no experience. I can't give you a good answer. I'll just be spouting BS. So, but I'm here to say nothing than to spout BS.
Well, what about the B2B part where you have the most experience in?
Yeah. Okay, so remind me what the biggest things to look out for when creating B2B strategies.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Well, I keep repeating it, but I think, well, let me say this. When you are starting off, and I've been fortunate within Buffer, part of my role was actually launching sort of a startup within a startup, and we scaled a product called Pablo to tens of thousands of weekly active users. And when you're in that spot, strategy is sort of like about survival, right? So when you're super small, strategy sort of comes easier because you're just trying to get from 0 to 10. And so you're thinking very deeply about what does this type of user really value, right? I think where strategy becomes quite difficult is when you've gone from pure startup trying to find product market fit to a point of like beginning to grow, right? When you begin to grow, you not only see, if you're lucky, you're seeing more users, you're seeing more revenue, and then you're getting more ideas about other things that you could do, right? The other parts of the market that you could serve. And that's a good thing. You're thinking about ways to deliver more value, ways to make more money. The hard part that I find is, or the way I think companies can fall and fail, is is by expanding too soon, like not actually thinking. It returns to everything I've said, not actually thinking about a specific type of customer and the needs that they have, right? Strategy is sort of this word that feels sort of fancy. It you know, you sort of picture someone or a group of people sitting in a boardroom and coming up with these ideas like, oh, we could do this, we could do that, or, you know, we could, and it comes back to what happened as a startup. As a startup, it was like, what could be good for these people? Like, we need to understand what could be good, and you launch something and you try it out and you get feedback. And that feedback part, I think, is the biggest point of failure for strategy. Strategy that is born out of like going away on an on-site, on off-site, and cramping yourself in the room and coming up with ideas without like this rich customer insight, like that's like the road to failure, right? And not only that rich insight, but really focused insight. And so, yeah, I'm trying to think of some examples here of maybe. Oh, and to be honest, I can think of one company, a social media company. I don't want to mention the name. They're sort of a competitor of Buffer's, where their strategy was super risky because it was confined. It was almost too narrow, right? It was like focused on one social platform, and once that platform made changes to the API, that business, it didn't die, but it really suffered, right? So in a sense, I've spoken about being narrow. There are examples where you can get too narrow, but I'd say that's not the norm. Where I see most people failing is like coming up with these ideas that are not based on insights and then having too broad a focus, right? And I return to these questions, like, this is what served us well. Focus on that target customer, how, like, we aim to serve them, what would signify success, what we need to stop doing. Those are what I've seen in real life.
Cool. The next question is from Alois, and she says, customer needs are always in flux and evolving. So she's asking, how do you develop your strategy so that it adapts to these changing needs?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a super question. Customer needs do vary. That's true. The thing that we try to achieve is to really understand very deeply the everyday life and work of these customers and try to understand what are the things that are most valuable and most likely to be around for a while, right? It is easy to focus. It's easy to pick a need to focus on, right? The hard part is to figure out, like, is this a need that is critical, right? Is this like a need that, if it disappeared, like, their business would be in trouble. So for us, what that meant was we had so many features within our product that were like sort of focused on some aspect of these customer needs. But in doing this investigation and studying like how these companies work, how they make money, like, we wanted to be as close as possible. We wanted to intersect with that revenue point, right? Like, how can we get as close as possible? Because those are critical needs. And it's not that you can't serve non-critical needs, but we wanted to put ourselves in a position where the business was sustainable for the long term. So I think my biggest encouragement is, how can you learn what are the most critical needs within the space you're working, right? And focus mostly on those needs, than focusing on stuff that's fleeting. Now, it doesn't mean, in the case of Buffer that does social media stuff, doesn't mean like if Instagram releases a new feature, most likely it's something that Buffer would work on. but it's really essential to be clear about what are the unmoving critical needs and try to solve those as much as possible. Again, I think this is where my lack of experience in B2C gives me this lens. I think in B2C world, maybe there's an assumption I have that maybe needs change more rapidly in a sense. But that's sort of the angle that we took. Like, what are the critical needs that are very high value, that are least likely to change in the next 6 months or in the next year?
Right, cool. The next question is from Kelvin, and he's asking, what has been your experience regarding setting OKRs for product teams, especially those OKRs that will be most effective to aid the discovery stage?
It's a good question. OKRs. Some people, so that's a curse word to some people, and some people love it. I'm not sure what everyone's experience with them has been. Yeah, we have OKRs at Zapier. We worked with OKRs for quite a while at Buffer, ended up moving in a different direction eventually. Yeah, so I think what I've seen with OKRs, they generally tends to be a lot of enthusiasm around, setting those objectives. And sometimes I sort of question how much insight is sort of informing those objectives, and even the KRs as well. So I think what we try to do at Buffer, and I think eventually we didn't really succeed, but I see it working well at Zapier, is to be really deeply informed on the customer side, but that takes doing the work before setting OKRs, right? Like, if I'm setting objectives and these key results, unless I have that context, I can't set the objective, right? And this is what I see. I saw that happen at Buffer quite a bit, and I've heard from other product people this happening. You need to actually have a system set up where you can investigate before, right? And so it takes a lot of foresight to set that up. I'm working now with a research team that did a bunch of work through 2019 that set the agenda for our number one OKR at Zapier, right? But keep in mind, like, they worked for months on that research and informed the team, and it sort of like bubbled up that, like, wow, this is crucial. We have to land this. So essentially, it takes building in systems or building in a practice where you can investigate well before you have to make a decision about the OKR. And so in our context, it looks like we have a dedicated research team that's sort of more focused on these bigger questions. For teams that don't have dedicated researchers, what it means is one of two things. You either need to be continually, like say weekly, speaking with customers and learning from them, or you need to set aside chunks of time consistently, like maybe once a quarter, maybe once a month, whatever it is, to learn from customers, so that you continually have this stream of insights that you can rely on to define or determine your OKRs. So it has to be something that's built in before you get to the point of setting. Yeah, but that's what I've seen work well here at Zapier is, having the team do that well before. And even now, our work in the research team is not focused on right now. We're focused on finding answers to the questions that are going to help us towards the end of the year and into 2021.
Cool. There's a question Dennis is asking, but I'm going to give him some moments for him to rephrase it. But I have a question. During your presentation, there's somewhere you talked about execution can fail if you don't really take the time to understand your customer. So, given the reality that you have at Zapier, where I think all your customers are distributed, somewhat remote. And do you have any advice for a PM who's working on a B2B product on how they can they can really effectively understand the customers? Especially, we have this new normal where now everything is now remote. So
yeah, that's a great one. I think my top advice is this for PMs. Block out 2 hours in a week, right? 2 hours each week, whether it's a set block or just a rolling 2-hour period, and speak to at least two customers every week, and try to watch them using your product, right? So literally jump on a Zoom call. Hey, really glad to have this chance to speak with you. Just want to ask you a few questions, and then if you don't mind, I'd love to have you just like show me how you've been using the product, right? So ask questions about if they're a new customer, what brought them here, what were they using before, how did they actually end up picking this? Was it someone else who picked this product, or was it them who picked this product? How did you start to use it? If they've been using it for a long time, how have you been using this lately? Or have you not been using it lately? I'd love to find out why. Could you open up the app? Or could you open up the product and just show me, what you've been doing in there, and just have them walk through it, right? If you do that consistently, just 2 hours a day, and this takes omitting, right? This is like essentially your mini strategy, right? You have to omit something or some things so that you can have this 2-hour block, right? And at the beginning, it's going to take time because you sort of have to, the best thing is to build process in so that this is more automatic, like a little plug for Zapier, because that's what we help do. But if you can build that practice in, 2 hours a week, we're not talking about a lot of time here. 2 hours a week, speak to two customers, ask them about how they're using a product, ask them to show you how they're using a product. That's like guaranteed the best thing you can do as a PM.
Cool. And that way, like, at least it'll safeguard your execution from failing, right?
Yeah. So essentially what that gives you is execution doesn't matter if you're not going the right direction, right? So, if I'm a football player and, I bend in a free kick from 30 yards, but it's in my own goal, well, is it a beautiful free kick or is it not, right? Like, we really need to be focused on going in the right direction. So unless you can build up this consistency in learning, you're never going to have the context to really make sure that the execution is being done well. Like, am I shooting at my own goal, or am I shooting at the opposition goal here?
Cool. Probably the last question from Dennis. He's asking, how do you guys quickly test that the new strategy is the right strategy before scaling it?
Yeah. At Buffer, what we did was we felt because of, especially looking at the industry data and what we had learned from our research, we felt really good about going all out. But importantly, having these measures in place that would sort of guide us. And so what this looked like was a few things. We had measures around how many of these new target customers were coming to our product, how many of those who are coming were actually signing up, the proportion of our customers, was it becoming more of our target customers, or were we actually getting, just like randoms coming in? And then importantly, like, what did revenue look like from these folks? And so this is where something like instrumenting is really important on the data side. Like, if we don't have the data set up, we can't actually track what was going on. But for us, that's what sort of like made sense. Like, are they coming? Are they signing up? Are they finding value? Are they sticking around? Are they paying us money, right? And so we can look at that data from the moment we start, because from the moment we shifted, marketing looked different. Like the places the marketing were trying to get customers from were different. Now our product had to take some time to evolve. But the bet that we were making was, can we provide enough value with some of our marketing and what we're producing? Like there's a new Buffer podcast that will probably give you some sort of insight into the target customer that Buffer is focused on. And so can we create some things early on that'll attract these folks? And then do we have the evidence here? So essentially, our executives are like, we're going to look at it after a month, sort of like we're going to look at it after a quarter. I mean, they're looking at it every single day, but those are sort of like the key moments that we're looking at to determine, are they coming? Are they finding value? What does this actually look like? Are we becoming also part of their ecosystem where Buffer is talked about more within their industry, right? So those are sort of the markers that we set. And I mean, legitimately, multiple people in the company, including me, look at revenue data, sign up data every single day. And so we could see day on day, week on week, month on month, whether we were succeeding or not. Yeah. So that's sort of how we went about it, and how it varies in terms of, the customer you're focused on and like what your sales cycle looks like. If you have a long sales cycle, then it's tough because, you don't know you have a sale until you have it. But in our situation where we could sort of track things, from day one, that's how we went about it.
All right, cool. There's one more question from Carol. She's asking, what's the one advice you would give a product marketer currently working on a positioning strategy for a new product?
Ooh, product marketer. I mean, to be honest, it's a bit different from the advice I'd given about a PM, but the same sort of approach where you need to have a set weekly system process of like learning from people. If it's a new product, obviously you're trying to serve a certain demographic. How can you speak to these people? How can you I'm even talking 15 minutes, 20 minutes. Like, how can you just have conversations with these people consistently? And hopefully building that up to, a couple of hours a week of just learning, right? I mean, I always think back to what's said about Warren Buffett and whatever we think of Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett, like this guy who's one of the richest people in the world. I found, when I found out this guy spends a big chunk of his day just reading, just learning. This was years and years ago. I realized, this is actually something that I should be integrating. This is even before my research days, right? And so if you're building something for a specific person, the best thing you can do is implement a process to learn from that person or those people as much as possible. Because in the end, like what else makes most sense, right? Like to read blogs about, and I'm guilty of this too, read blogs about some new approach or some new tool. And those things are all good, but what's the big lever here? The big lever here is knowledge. I heard someone talking about, when it comes to a marketer, and this is talking more about a VP, you want to be the person that walks into the room and has information, has data that makes people go, wow, I didn't know that. That's really interesting, right? I think that's where you can have a superpower, right? You can be the person who knows things that other people do not know because you have implemented a process to learn, right? To learn from those people. You're going to be able to walk into a meeting and say, I spoke to 3 people and, they showed me this, or people who started using our product, I spoke to them and this is like a real problem for them, or this is something they're excited about. Maybe we can double down. That's a superpower, right? That's the kind of thing that gets people very, very in tune with what you're doing. So that's the kind of advice I'd give you. Like start off simple. Like don't try boil the ocean. 15 minutes, half an hour, an hour. If you can spend that time learning from these folks, then you can start implement ideas other people haven't even thought about.
Cool. Roy, thank you so much for that informative and insightful webinar. I mean, there's quite a bit of learning we've sort of like absorbed from all of this. Do you have like any last remarks or any remarks for the team? The community?
Yeah, thanks for jumping on again. So sorry for what happened earlier with that Zoom bomb. These things happen. Make sure you have passwords on your Zoom calls. It's gonna help. Yeah, one last thing. If you ever want to get in touch with me, I'm active on Twitter. Yeah, so if you look for Roy Olende on Twitter, and I just started a blog it's on Substack. It's called System 17, where I'm talking mostly about research operations. So if you ever want to see what I'm up to, it's going to be sort of this running log of what I'm up to and what I'm learning. Definitely feel free to jump in there and subscribe. But Roy Olende on Twitter, my DMs are open.
Cool, awesome. Thank you so much. For the rest of the guys, we've been recording the webinar, so I will be shooting you guys an email.